In mid-June, an Indonesian judge sentenced a man named Alexander Aan to 2.5 years in prison. What did Aan do? He posted on Facebook that he wasn't sure about the existence of God. He also posted on Facebook a couple of cartoons about Islam. For this, a mob attacked him, and then he was arrested, and a judge sentenced him. It's a really disturbing story of the victim being prosecuted, in my opinion, and I think opinion of a lot of our listeners, but it's actually one of many cases where we're getting more reports of intolerance in Indonesia. This is a country of over 200 million people, predominantly Muslim, but it claims to be a democracy, but minority religious groups, Christians, are also having their churches shut down. And get this, Lady Gaga was blocked from performing in Jakarta by Muslim hardliners. So what is going on with Indonesia, and what can we learn about this case? For that, we have Michael DeDora of CFI Center for Public Policy. Michael, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Yeah. So Indonesia, what is going on here? I mean, it's a democracy, so presumably it has to be a party to various international agreements about human rights, freedom of speech, freedom of religion.
Yes, so it's signed on to, obviously, many UN treaties and international treaties that guarantee freedom of belief and expression, and it does have a constitution that supposedly guarantees freedom of religion. However, the Indonesian constitution maintains that you have to belong to one of 6 religions to qualify for that freedom of religion. So in effect, being an atheist is illegal in Indonesia.
So the judge is therefore just actually applying, it's not like the judge is riffing or improvising here, he's applying the law.
Right, he's applying the law, or a panel of judges are applying the laws that are already in place in Indonesia. Of course, they are skirting in some sense their promises to international treaties, but this is the law in Indonesia. So,
what are the treaties that conflict with this?
The main treaty that conflicts with it is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. That document is very explicit and very strong in guaranteeing freedom of thought, belief, and expression. At the same time, there is some troubling language in what's known as the ICCPR, in the sense that there is language in there in Article 20 that references incitement to religious hostility and hatred. And that's actually the law that Alexander Aan was convicted under. So there is a sense that while Indonesia is not keeping its promise to UN treaties and international treaties, these treaties actually do include some troubling language that might allow Indonesia to get away with some of the things that they're doing.
Tell us more about this guy, Alexander Aan. I mean, what do we know about him?
We don't know very much about him. There haven't been many news reports out there. We know essentially that he's a 30-year-old civil servant, that he's pretty meek and softly spoken. There's been an interview or two with him done by the media, and he seems to have a lot of regret about what's happened, and he's certainly not the kind of atheist that you think is going out there and screaming his head off about why religion is a ridiculous idea. He just simply went on Facebook and said, "I don't think God exists," and he posted a couple cartoons.
Wow. Well, so how does this story fit into what is also going on either in Indonesia or in other countries? I mean, it's not easy to be an atheist in a lot of parts of the world. So maybe put Indonesia in a bit of a global context.
Yeah, Indonesia's not split off by itself. Many Middle Eastern countries, unfortunately, countries that are dominated by Islamic values and politics, have these sorts of laws, and they're used not actually necessarily just to keep atheists quiet and throw them in jail, but unfortunately quiet any sort of religious, dissident minority faith. So in a country where Shias are the dominant political party, they're going to potentially use these laws to subject Sunnis, and et cetera, all the way on down the line. In Indonesia, you've seen, unfortunately, Christians being subjected very often to this sort of punishment. So Indonesia's, not by itself. Any country where you're seeing really radical Islam, unfortunately, you're seeing attempts to keep quiet any sort of, atheist or just dissident voices.
And so what is Center for Inquiry doing about this? You held, I understand, a protest.
Yeah, so the first step, obviously, is to bring some attention to this. There's not been much mass media coverage. There have not been many groups talking about it. Amnesty International is one that has been talking about it. So the first thing we've been trying to do is bring some attention to it socially. So we had a protest outside the Indonesian embassy in Washington, D.C. A couple days later, we formally wrote the ambassador for Indonesia to the United States, asking him to convey our concerns back to the government in Indonesia. So that's what we've done so far, along with kind of doing Twitter and Facebook sorts of viral posting type things. Our next steps are working at the United Nations and at the State Department, hopefully to get those bodies to put some pressure on Indonesia to respect the commitments they've made to these international treaties we've talked about that promise freedom of belief and expression.
This case is so, in a way, outrageous. I mean, I really think this is prosecuting the victim here. I mean, that's what I would call it, that you would think that people would get pretty up in arms, and I think probably our listeners or our viewers are going to feel that way. So what can they do?
Well, you're right, and that's one of the most ridiculous things about the case is that when Aan was beaten, he was arrested and then brought in front of blasphemy charges.
Right, it's upside down justice.
People actually beating him up, being charged, and that's unfortunately what happens often in Indonesia. I understand that for many Americans, it's easy to feel disattached from this sort of thing. It's halfway across the world. However, one of the things that we at CFI think is important is to let these authorities know that this is not just going to go unchallenged. So if you go to the centerforinquiry.net and look at our news updates, you can see that we have some news updates about Aan. And within those news updates, we have links that you can use to contact officials in Indonesia and tell them that this is something that really bothers us. They have commitments to international treaties, and they should stick to those commitments. At the same time, it is important to also raise consciousness in the United States itself. So if you can organize a protest in your local community, if there's any sort of Indonesian consular office there, if you can have any sort of event about it, just to get people aware that this is going on. And it's not just an isolated case either. It's a history of it, unfortunately.
Well, Michael, thank you for sharing this. I mean, I hope a lot of people are going to be activated by this. And so I want to thank you for letting us know what's going on here on Point of Inquiry.
I'm glad I could be here. Thank you.
It's great to have you.